Hello y'all and welcome back. So in this video I want to talk about the idea of character, okay? So supposing somebody said, describe Dan Herrick, right? Now, right away, this question or this request, I suppose, is ambiguous because it could mean, what they could be asking for is a description of my physical features, right? Like the police, if I had stolen something of yours, right? And they were on the lookout for me, said, describe this guy, right? So height, weight, build, hair color, eye color, right? But probably when somebody asks this, most of the time, right, they're not asking so much for a physical description as they are for a description of me as a person, right? What's he like? And in that case, what are you asked to describe? Well, in the physical case, all right, you are describing my body, and the terms that you use are various physical features. But what about that second case? In the second case, you are going to be describing my soul. Now stick with me. I know that the term soul is very closely associated in our minds with the idea of a non-material, non-physical thing which survives your death and goes to heaven or hell or something like that. Now, that's a perfectly legitimate understanding of the word soul. It comes to us from Plato and then later from Christianity. And it's something we discuss in my Introduction to Philosophy class. But that's not the only meaning of soul, and in fact, that's not the core meaning of soul. The first and core meaning of soul doesn't have those metaphysical connotations. It just means you as a person without reference to your body. Okay, so some of the first people to use this term systematically, like Socrates, who we'll look at, use it in this very bare bones way. Now, you can understand that thing as being immaterial, as surviving your death, but at its core, it's just you as a person without reference to your body. So when somebody says, describe Dan Herrick, meaning, like, what's he like as a person, they're asking you to describe my soul. Now, when you make a description of somebody, their soul, right, their character and personality, you list a bunch of traits, right? So we could just do this for anybody, right? So supposing we describe you, and I don't know you, unfortunately. I hope to get to know you. But let's say that your friends or family describe you, right? And they say, well, they're kind, and they're funny, and they're quirky, and they're generous, right? But I mean, nobody's perfect, right? So maybe you have some other traits that are maybe not so good, okay? Maybe you're kind of flaky. Maybe you're a little bit shallow. Maybe you're a little bit self-absorbed, right, at times. So obviously a full list for you or for anyone, for me, would be enormous. We have many, many traits, right? But the point is that the list of these traits, right, that describes your soul, that list, that's your character, okay? So your character is the collection of traits that describes your soul. Again, your soul is you as a person without reference to your body. Now, on this list, some of those traits, kindness, selflessness, whatever, are going to be desirable. And these good or desirable character traits, we give them a name. We call these the virtues. And no doubt this is a term that you've heard. And so the good or desirable character traits are the virtues. Okay? And some of them are bad or undesirable, right? Flaky, shallow, self-absorbed, whatever. Okay? These are going to be your vices. So a vice is a bad or undesirable character trait. So again, that's the relationship amongst these terms, right? Character, virtue, vice, soul. And then personality is kind of a catch-all term, but it most closely maps onto just this idea of character, right? This list of traits that describe your soul. Okay, so we have this as our definitions of these main terms. Before we go into the question of why should you study ethics, which I'll talk about in the next video, I want to make a very, very important note. So Aristotle is writing in about 330 BC when he writes the Nicomachean Ethics, okay? And he invents this term ethike to describe the study of ethos, what he's doing, okay? Almost exactly 300 years later, the Roman statesman, orator, and philosopher Cicero is writing his own book about ethics. It's called On Moral Ends. Well, he writes several, but his big one's called On Moral Ends, De Finibus Bonum et Malorum. And he has a problem because he's writing about this discipline that Aristotle writes about, ethics, but ethike is a Greek word, and Cicero is writing in Latin, and there is no natural language term for ethike because Aristotle invents it, right? So Cicero needs to invent his Latin equivalent of the Greek word ethike. So he invents the word moralia, from mos mores, right, which is a direct Latin equivalent of this Greek word ethike. The reason this is relevant, I mean, there's some historical interest there, that where words come from, I like that. But it's relevant for this reason. When you do anything really with ethics or philosophy, as I have done for quite some time now, all the time you encounter people saying, well, here's the difference between ethics and morals, or being ethical and being moral. and they'll give you them some answer or description. And every single time they do that, it's a little bit different. Every answer is a little bit different. And the reason is there is no difference at all. One is a Greek term, the other is a Latin term, the direct Latin equivalent of that Greek term. So there's absolutely no difference. So anytime somebody presents this difference to you, here's the difference between ethics and morals, right? You know that it's a specious distinction. It's a made-up distinction, right? It's like saying, I don't know, what's the difference between chair and silla, right, in Spanish, right? And if somebody said, well, there's this whole difference, and they go on to explain it, and of course, that would be just made up, right? Because one is English, the other is Spanish. That's it. There's no difference. And the reason this is important is because throughout the course, including the next lecture, I'm going to be using the terms ethical and moral interchangeably, and there really is no difference at all between them, right? So when I do that, these are terms you can swap in and out interchangeably. One has a Greek root, the other has a Latin root. That's it. So, all right, in the next lecture, or the next little video rather, I'll be talking about the question, why study ethics? Thanks.